Hi guys, Chronically Me with Nicole. Before we go anywhere, go down below, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you're notified anytime I upload a new video. So I've been racking my brain about videos to help make my page what it is. And I started thinking I want to do a series. I have so many different diagnoses that I want to make a video for each one, explaining it, how it happened with me, how it affects my daily life, and that's really what I would like to do. So today's is going to be on my RSD/CRPS, depending on who you ask. RSD stands for Reflex Sympathetic Dystrophy. It is an autonomic nervous system disorder that your pain sensors are always in overdrive. Somebody can flick you and it can feel like you got shot. Your skin hurts all the time. There's certain shirts that I can't wear still to this day. Mine did start out in my right wrist from trauma, and it spread full body, and I'll get into that in the video about how that happened. But it's one of the most devastating disorders you could ever be diagnosed with. And I pray for cancer patients everywhere, Lou Gehrig's, all the, MS, all the terrible diseases that are out there. I feel for them. I really do. The difference with RSD is there's no possible end date. You're stuck with it for the rest of your life, and that can be very depressing, and it can mess with your mental health pretty recklessly if you let it. So my story is I was in a head-on collision in October 2nd, 2007. I believe I've already shown the pictures of the car accident, but I'll insert them here as well. I broke 116 bones, ICU for 3 weeks, I believe, and patient for 2. Messed up my legs really bad, had a traumatic brain injury. It was probably the worst day of my life. I thought I was going to die. I really did. When they loaded me up in life flight, I thought it was over. But I shattered both of my arms, but my right arm was worse. The surgeon said when he opened it up, it looked like sawdust. So during my trauma surgery, he externally fixated my right wrist. Why he didn't just go ahead and put the metal in at the time, I'm not sure, but he put metal pins that stuck out about this far, and there were 6 of them from my hand. About 2 months after the accident, I was going to him. I was having so much pain. He didn't understand it. He kept saying it was, post-traumatic pain. It was post-traumatic arthritis, which I still don't think is a thing. He just kept telling me to take my pain meds and that, it would heal in time. More months later went by. We were back at the ortho's office, same thing. My hands were turning colors. They were mottled. They were swollen. They were cold to the touch. I couldn't even move my fingers. It was so bad. So he finally sent me to a pain specialist who was supposed to be the best pain specialist in Pensacola, because all this was happening in Florida at the time. I went and see the pain specialist. The entire 45-minute appointment, he never spoke a word to me. He talked through a recorder about me He made contact with me once. He looked at my wrist. He looked at the symptoms. He did a thermogram on it. And he did an EMG on it, which was probably the most painful thing that I've had done since the breaks of the car accident. And he said, yep, it's exactly what I thought it was. And I was, obviously lost. He hands me a brochure that says Reflex Sympathetic Dystrophy on the top of it. And he said, this is what you have and your life has changed forever. And then he walked out of the room. I got no explanation. I got nothing from this man. So I go home, I start researching it. The more I research, the more scared I get, seeing how bad it can get with people. And at this point, I was lucky. It was just in my arm. So a couple months later, we move. My ex-husband was military. So we moved to South Dakota. We've, researched doctors, found who was supposed to be the RSD guru of South Dakota. Started seeing him. And the rule of thumb with injections, they do injections on your back, in your neck, wherever. The rule of thumb is if after 3 injections it does not work, you are to discontinue the injections. I was in his office twice a week, every week, for over 3 months, getting these stellate ganglion block injections. He did everything freehand. He never used a fluoroscope like you're supposed to use. I never had any of the symptoms of, like the numb arm. I didn't have anything. I never felt anything from these injections. So I'm not sure if he was doing them wrong or if they just weren't working for me. I don't understand. So, after I told him I wanted to stop the injections, his very next suggestion was surgery. Anybody with RSD knows surgery should be your very last option. Your very last option. Like, you have exhausted all other options and surgery is the only way to go. So I would show you, it's a little bit difficult, but on the back of my neck, I have about a 7-foot incision, or 7-inch incision on the back of my neck. And I have an incision in my hip where there was a little pocket where they put the battery pack. They removed a neck bone so they could fuse the 2 paddles to my neck. And he told me this is the best way to go. This is going to give you the most relief, even if it's not working correctly right away. Medtronic can come in and they can readjust. So I trusted him. He was my doctor. So the trial run that he did reduced my pain by about 30%, which now I'm told was like a mind trick. I wanted it to work so bad that I felt like it was working. I don't know for sure. So he decided, he talked me into it, getting this stimulator. And about 3 days after I got it, I was having excruciating pain everywhere. My neck, my lower back where the battery pack was, my left arm, my legs, my face, my stomach, my back. I mean, my chest, everything hurt. Hurt more than anything I can explain. And the only way I can explain RSD to somebody that doesn't have it is imagine your worst sun poisoning sunburn you've ever had and somebody taking a Brillo pad to it, rubbing it raw. That's what it feels like. When the wind blows on our skin, that's what it feels like. When we put on clothes that are not soft, like this shirt is extremely soft. Sometimes I can't even wear this shirt. Sometimes it's just a tank top because nothing can touch my arms. Sometimes I don't sleep with anything on because a sheet is too much around my legs. So I tell him all this, and he gets Medtronic to come in and they redo my spinal stimulator. They redo the settings. We did this 4 times in over a 2-month span. Nothing helped. It was still getting worse. So I shut it off myself. Not using it. I'm not going to get myself worse. So I shut it off. And so my mom started thinking, she ended up moving up to South Dakota from Florida for a little while to help me. And she started thinking there's got to be something else that we can do. So we start researching. We find a doctor named Pradeep Chopra. He's in Delaware or Maryland, one of those states, I believe. But he is an absolute expert when it comes to RSD. CRPS is what they call it now. But he would call me at 10 o'clock every night at my home and check on me. He was not my doctor. He was just that dedicated to patients with RSD that he wanted to help everybody. So he actually helped my mom find a somewhat local guy that offered ketamine. He told my mom ketamine is what she needs. This is going to help her. She's going to feel so much better. It's going to save her life. He was a very big proponent of ketamine. So he helped us find a doctor that was in Colorado Springs, about 8.5 hours away. We drove to my first appointment. He tried to get me to walk across the room and I collapsed. I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair at this point. Full-blown wheelchair. It was in my feet. It was in my legs. It was everywhere. I couldn't walk on my own. I had help going to the bathroom, help to take a bath, which the bath water burnt like acid. It was terrible. It was just a terrible time. So we ended up going to the appointment in Colorado Springs. And we, did a little bit of sightseeing, like we could with somebody in a wheelchair. For the weekend, we met with him. He said, I want you back next week for your first ketamine treatment. It's going to be a 3-day treatment. So my mom said, okay. So we come back. I don't remember what the first dose was that he gave me. I believe it was 700-800 milligrams. This is my first one I've ever had. And you typically want the higher doses for the pain patients. And it was 3 days. And I remember he gave me Versed to help with the hallucinations, but that was the only medication, just ketamine and Versed. And after my first treatment, I sat up on the side of the bed. I stood up for the first time in about 7 months, and I walked around the hospital room all by myself. No cane. I just slowly walked the room, and I instantly felt the pain just going away. So the second day I was really excited for. The third day I was even more excited for. I walked out of that hospital with no wheelchair, got in my mom's car with no assistance, and I enjoyed the 8.5 hour trip back to Rapid City. That doctor literally saved my life. I was on the brink. I was ready to go. I couldn't live like that anymore. It was just terrible. It was a terrible experience in general. Nobody should have to go through that. But the problem is there's so many doctors right now that are so uneducated when it comes to CRPS, RSD, whatever you want to call it. Hell, even my Ehlers-Danlos. Doctors look at me like, what? What is that? You're a freaking doctor. You should know this stuff. If I go to the ER, don't look at me like I'm a junkie because I'm saying, yeah, let me try Toradol first to see if that helps. It never does, but I'm willing to try anything. Then they come in with a Dilaudid. Well, this is the only narcotic we're going to give you. That's fine. I didn't even ask you for it. It's frustrating. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to rant, but it's frustrating. So, anyways, the nerve damage in my arm from the accident is what caused my RSD. Some people can just be walking around the street willy-nilly and just all of a sudden get pain, and now they've got RSD. Nobody knows why anybody gets it. They're starting to do more studies to see if it's a genetic quality, hereditary. They haven't come up with anything solid yet that I know of, so don't quote me on that, but it could be that. So that is my video on my RSD. So my next video next week, I'm going to do on my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. which will hopefully help open up some views, on what Ehlers-Danlos is and how bad it can be for your body, really. But I appreciate you guys listening, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.